Hi everyone, I'm Shanoa Grove and I'm here for the real estate meeting and wanted to just reach out to welcome you guys. I have a very special guest today. Mr. Stacy Kellams is with us and he's going to talk to us about real estate investing. A big part of real estate investing is networking. A big part of real estate investing is joining your real estate club, and that's actually what we've kind of designed this presentation, this interview around doing, so that you can focus on building your business by building your network, because that is absolutely the key to being successful in this business. So Stacy, thank you so much for coming and agreeing to be grilled by me. I gave him a list of about 50 questions about 5 minutes ago that I told him I was going to go through. So it's going to be a little extemporaneous, which I think will be kind of fun for us and even fun for you guys.
Sure.
So let's get started. I'll start with one of my favorite questions to ask every real estate investor that I know. What do you love about real estate? What do you love about real estate investing?
Okay. Thank you for having me, first of all. I'm looking forward to it. And the thing that I love the most about real estate is the freedom that it allows us to have in our lives. You know, you can design your life just about any way you want with real estate.
How do you define freedom for you? What represents that lifestyle or that feeling?
I define it as being able to do what I want, when I want, where I want, with who I want, you know, for as long as I want.
Mm-hmm.
You know, being able to go where I want, when I want, not having to answer to anyone else. When I first got started in real estate, I'd heard that, like I'm sure most people watching have heard, that real estate's created more millionaires than anything else.
True,
and so
very
I thought, well, all right, then that's where I need to go.
So freedom's not bad, and the money doesn't hurt either, for those of you guys who are watching.
And talking about money, we talked about it a little bit ago. I know a lot of people listening are probably thinking, wow, why didn't you say money? But I don't just want little pieces of green paper.
Mm-hmm.
I want what they can buy me.
Mm-hmm.
And freedom is one of the things that can buy me.
Yeah, so I know that I absolutely enjoy spending time with my family and our 4-year-old, and I know how much that means to me. In fact, as I've kind of worked to incorporate him into our business, I'm taking him with me all over wherever I go. And you know, you can't just walk into your boss's office and say, I'm bringing my kid to work today, right? I mean,
exactly.
But you can do that in real estate, so you can actually afford to spend more time together. And I know that's something that I love about real estate. And can you, I know you have rental properties too, so you do rental properties, you do fix and flip type investments, and you've got some really cool strategies that I know you use to invest in real estate. Can you talk about some of those strategies that you use to invest?
Okay, sure. Yeah, when I first got started, like I'm sure most people who are watching or listening right now, I thought, and I'm sure they think that, and maybe you even thought this, I need to be a landlord first. I want rental property right out of the gate.
Yeah.
Is that how you started? Did you start with rental property?
You know, my family, I come from a long line of rental property owners, slumlords that have actually become very successful as they've just rode out the market. So yeah, I know that was an absolute thought for me. Sure.
And that's what I thought, and I bought my first investment property, my first rental property at 25. I thought, that's what I want. I need a portfolio of 10 or 15 or 20 houses thrown off, whatever I thought the number was, $200, $300 a month each, and you're doing the math, and then you start accumulating them, at least I did, start accumulating the rental property, and you realize, okay, so when you have 10 rental properties, 10 hot water heaters can go out on you at once. It doesn't happen all the time. You know, 10 roofs can need to be repaired at once. You know, 10 toilets can overflow at once. Yeah, exactly. So I've switched over the years my thinking, and what I tell my students now is learn how to make money, create money on demand with real estate. Learn how to buy and sell and get the check in your hand so that you can do whatever you want with that money first before you go, you know, loading up on a bunch of rental property, because it does take a little bit of money to hold on to properties.
Absolutely, it does. We had an experience recently with one of our properties where we replaced the main drain line which was about a $7,000 reinvestment into our property we didn't think we were going to have to make. And it wasn't even something that you would expect, like the tenant's, kid put a G.I. Joe down the toilet, right? It's like, it wasn't even it didn't even have a funny story to it. It was just what it was. So, you talked about getting that check. Tell me about your first deal. Tell me about your first check. Tell me about how that felt for you and what sort of changes that caused in your life to know that, wow, this really does work and I really can do it. And tell me about your first deal.
Sure. Well, my very first deal was a rental property because that's what I was dead set on doing. I had just read the book Nothing Down in the 90s by Robert Allen. It's way out of date. Don't go buy the book. You don't need to. It was out of date when I read it, probably in the mid 90s. And so I came at it thinking I need a portfolio of rental property. So my very first deal was I found this little rental property that had a main house and a little unit in the back, and I wanted to live in the main house and then rent out. There was already a renter back there paying rent, and the problem was I didn't have any money for a down payment. I found a little old man who was willing to own or finance the property, but he wanted $5,000 down, and I didn't have it. So what I did, my strategy was I kept meeting him out at the property. I wanted to make him like me because I knew I ultimately was.
That's key. I like that.
Okay, good. I knew I was eventually going to ask him if he would let me in without a down payment. So I wanted to make sure he liked me a lot. And I was a cute little 25-year-old who had no clue, but it worked. I built rapport with him, and I remember on one of our last meetings out at the property, he said, you remind me a lot of myself at your age. And I knew that was when I needed to spring the question. I said, I'm glad you brought that up because I don't know how much money you had to get started with, but I don't have any. Is there any way you'd let me in for no money down? And he thought about it. He said he took a day or so.
Did he make a decision right there?
He didn't make, no, he took a day and he came back and he said, you know what, if you'll cover your closing costs and mine just to do the paperwork. And we just went down to his attorney. We didn't have a big formal closing, so it was only a few $100s or so. This is in Lubbock, Texas. I forgot what it was, but he said, if you'll cover my closing costs and yours, it's just the cost to do the paperwork, I'll do it for you.
So part of your strategy to have him come every time to meet you at the property, was it also to kind of have him face reality of how much work the property needed?
Right. Sure. No, it did. It needed. Now, I could obviously move in, a single 25-year-old guy. As long as it has a roof over it, I could move in with a sleeping bag. But it did need work. But you don't want to go out there. I knew I couldn't just show up to his property and start, pointing out all the flaws in it. It's his property. That would be stupid, especially when I'm going to ask him this big favor at the end. And so I had to use kid gloves and walk him slowly through the process. And so we did that, and I did gently point out how much work I was going to have to put into it and all of that. And so, long story short, I got into the property for almost nothing, practically nothing. And then, so my very first check was the very first rent check that I picked up, which I had read in the book, Nothing Down in the 90s, to time your closing for the first of the month so that you can get and I got the rent check at the closing table, actually.
That probably felt pretty good.
That felt pretty good, yeah. It was little, but it felt pretty good because I had broken through the fear and I did it.
Tell me how you actually found that property. What kind of, a lot of times I talk to a lot of investors who aren't taking action, aren't doing the marketing, aren't looking for deals. How did you find that deal? What did you just like finish the book and say, get in your car and you go? Like, how did you do it?
I did do some of that. I did get in my car and drive neighborhoods and that sort of thing. And so I was familiar with what neighborhoods I wanted to invest in. But the way I found it, my marketing was so simplistic back then. I opened the paper and he was advertising in the classified ad. The owner will finance, blah, blah, blah. And so I called him and I was probably shaking as I talked, as I dialed the number. What am I going to say? What if he answers? And all those things. But you break through the fear. You just do it.
So what was his motivation to sell? You said the property needed some repairs,
Right.
but did he not have the money to do this? Or was he wanting to get out of the business? What was his
Sure.
motivation? Why do you want to sell it?
He wanted to, that's a great question. Yes, he owned half of that block.
Okay.
And he owned quite a bit of real estate throughout Lubbock, and he wanted out of the business. He was going to sell it and
Sell like
owner
one a year.
Yeah,
for
he
the
was
rest
going to
of-
owner
yeah.
finance and live off the notes.
Nice,
Is what he
nice.
wanted to do, and so
Well, that's a great exit strategy.
Yeah,
you
sure.
know, for a lot of people who are buy and hold investors. You just
Right.
have to break through that moment where it starts to come in more than it starts to go out.
right. What was funny was, when I met him, he was ready to retire within 2 or 3 years, and then obviously he stayed in my life for quite some time as I paid off that note to him, and he was still buying. He just couldn't stop
Couldn't stop
buying.
himself, yeah. Did you buy any other properties from him?
I did, yeah. And at one time, there was another investor on that street who lived on the street. He and I at one time, we owned almost half the block.
Oh my gosh. And then were you owner financing them out to other people or just
No,
renting?
I was renting them,
Okay,
yeah.
okay. So that must have been pretty exciting at 25. I know every time I have someone who's a student or in one of our classes that's young, it's like, man, to be 25, to
Right.
kind of start right then and there and kind of and to commit to it, what you would have seen, what you would have gone through, the experiences that you would have had, and that's impressive to start so young. For the people out there who are coming from corporate America or from a different life and wanting to take a step in, what are some of the first steps that you recommend that people go through as they're making a transition from whatever they're doing today to whatever they really want to be doing to get that freedom that you were talking about?
Well, step number 1, don't quit your day job, not just yet.
I agree with that.
I've seen students do that before,
Okay.
and they'll come to me and they'll say, well, I just quit. Well, have you done your first deal yet? Well, no, but I'm going to make an offer. I'm sure you've heard that. I just cringe. No,
Sure.
especially if you have a family that's
Sure,
dependent.
sure.
So realize it's going to be a process. To get out of the rat race is going to be a process. I was lucky in that I never really got into the rat race to begin with. I started so young. But yeah, I would say, like you mentioned a second ago, develop your exit strategy. Figure out how long it's going to take you to replace your current income, whatever that may be, and don't have unrealistic expectations. Realize it's going to take some time. It's not going to happen overnight, and
How long did you look for your first deal before you got it? Was it like a
That's a
matter
good
of
question.
days or weeks, or do you?
It was months. It was a matter of months because I would.
People don't realize that it
Right.
does
It
take
takes
some
some-
time,
yes,
and
yes.
it takes some time to build up that courage to even make the call that you made.
Oh, absolutely. It took a lot of. I looked through the paper and driving neighborhoods and doing little things like that and making phone calls and going and meeting people and realizing, they want 10,000 down or 5,000 down, and they won't take anything less than that, and they
Right.
don't have to because it's a deal. It really is a good deal,
Right,
even at
right,
what they're
right.
asking. And so it takes time.
Okay, so going back to don't quit your day job just yet. What
Okay.
are some of the other steps that you recommend for someone who's just getting started making that transition into real estate full time,
I would.
or even part time?
I would say that, and you'll identify with this because your husband's an engineer, realize that it's just a numbers game. It's math,
Yeah.
is all it really is. You figure out how much you're currently making, and then you need to have I think a student needs to have a few deals under his belt before he or she even considers quitting their day job first, and have a realistic expectation of what they're going to make on each deal, and then how many of those deals is it going to take to equal what they're currently making, and then just do the backwards math to know how many deals they need to be marketing afford in
Right.
order to do that number of deals, to make the amount of money that they're going to lose when they quit their job.
So for me personally, when I made the transition, I made it exactly the way you said. I did it slowly, and I worked my full-time job, and then I went to my employer and I said, you know, I really need to take one day off a week. And they, luckily enough, I was in a position where they said, okay.
Awesome.
And then at some point, it became unprofitable for me to stay in my full-time job.
Right.
And that's when I said, you know, I love you guys, because I was actually one of the people who, I really enjoyed where I worked, and I enjoyed doing what I was doing, but I saw a larger vision for myself and another profession, and then I let go. But for, you know, those of you who are still working another job, one of the great things that having a job affords you is the ability to get a loan in today's environment. So if you're looking at doing investment property for buy and hold, or even, you know, fix and flip, having that ability to get that loan is huge. So because money is such an issue.
Right.
So you talked about, you know, some of the other deals that you looked at, and where they said you've got to have $10,000 to put down.
Right.
At some point, or at what point did you say, I need a money partner?
Okay,
How did you find that person? What were you looking for? Did you go through that process?
Sure. Oh, absolutely. So what I did, and I don't remember where I got this habit. I think it was from Anthony Robbins. I think I'd listened to Anthony Robbins' stuff very early on, at 22, 23 years old, and I believe it was from him that I learned. He talked about going and seeking knowledge from people who have done, find who's done what you want to do, and take them to lunch, pick their brain.
Mm-hmm.
So I created that habit very early on of going to lunch with people who were successful real estate investors or realtors or whatever. And no, I didn't take them to McDonald's, even though I was in my 20s. I would take them to a nice lunch. And I realized from doing that people like to talk, and they like to share knowledge. They like to talk about themselves and what they've done, because people rarely ask them what they've done. And so I realized people will actually open up. So having said that, I started going to lunch on a regular basis with that old man that I bought the house from. We became friends, and I would pick his brains. I mean, he was almost 80 years old. He'd seen and done it all.
He'd seen all the market cycles, yeah.
Absolutely. And I asked him, how he got started, and he's the one who told me, he started with a money partner when he was very young, and now he is the money partner. He has money to loan out, and so I partnered up with him.
Do you remember what the terms were? I know I'm putting you on the spot, and I know it's been a while.
I remember, I really don't. It was low. I thought it was high at the time. I forgot what it was. He was one of those old guys that he thought if he could beat the interest rate, if he could beat CD rates, he was happy. So it was
10% is like what I see. Like most older people are just like fixated on that number. So
and he was less. I remember it being less than that. It was 7, 8, 9%.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah, something.
Who wouldn't want a money partner like that?
Exactly. And so that was my very first money partner. And then, from there it just grows by word of mouth.
So was that relationship?
Exactly. And that's what I was just about to say. My money partner is a relational business. It's you do what you say you're going to do. You make your payments when you say you're going to make them, and then trust is built up. And then
you make your payments to him before anything else, because you want to keep that relationship going.
And then he starts talking to some of his friends who have money, and you've seen that. And then all of a sudden people are calling you, hey, I want to do a deal with you. So.
Yeah, that's a great story. I'm really glad we were actually able to delve in and have you remember that for us, because I talk all the time about how important networking is. One relationship, one deal, one opportunity, can take you, on several other deals. And what's interesting is, regardless of what the interest rate was, it sounds like it was still below a hard money rate.
Oh, sure.
Which is huge. So it allows you to keep more of the profit, and he's thrilled. So don't always
he thought he was taking advantage of me.
So exactly. So don't always, think when you're finding a money partner that they've got to have these outrageous, exorbitant rates. So you got to find someone to build that
Oh, yeah.
relationship with, and then take it from there.
I've had money partners who thought that 5% in the current interest rate
Can you give us
climate.
their
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
That's awesome. That's definitely a great story. Let me get back to some of my questions here. So I know you've met a lot of investors over the years, and are there any qualities that for you you've said this, have you been able to pick them out as they walk through the door? This person's going to be successful. That person's not going to be successful. Have you ever been surprised? I know I have. I mean, I talked to one person who had what I call summer teeth. Summer teeth are there and summer teeth are aren't. And I didn't think he was going to be successful at all. And he did so well. I mean, it shocked me. And the reason why he did so well is because he took consistent and constant action.
Right.
So what is it that you found in dealing with investors? What's the difference between someone who's going to be successful and someone who's just going to flail around?
Right. You hit the nail on the head. The ability to take action. I think it all comes down to that. Are they willing to take not just action, massive action?
Right.
Had I just stopped at reading the book or looking at the paper, and I didn't actually ever
Right.
call anyone, I wouldn't have ever met that old man. And had I called him and then not shown up at the appointment,
Right.
I wouldn't have met him. And then had I not gone back to the place 4 or 5 or 6 other times, I wouldn't have been able to. So the ability to take action, I think, is absolutely one of the most important, and then an attitude.
Okay.
I think they've got to have a positive attitude. I've seen this a lot with students when I'll coach them and I'll tell them, okay, you need to go do this, and before I even get it out of my mouth, they're telling me why it won't work. They're arguing with me, and I'm thinking, oh, then why are you here? Why are you have paid me money, you want my advice.
Right.
And I liken that to...
Is it fear talking?
I don't know. I think that some of it is fear, and they're probably doing analysis in their head and having analysis paralysis, or is that what it was? Yeah.
Yeah.
I think there is some of that, and then I think some people are just naturally negative and skeptical, and obviously there is some risk involved with real estate. They're afraid that they might make a mistake.
Sure.
What we have, that's how we've learned.
Sure.
We've made every mistake in the book. But when a student starts arguing with me before they ever do their first deal and telling me all the reasons it won't work when I know that it will work, I have to stop and scratch my head and think, well, why are you here then? What is it?
So how do you push a student over that hump, which it sounds a little like fear to me.
Mm-hmm.
I would say too that in my experience, I've seen successful people who want to transition into real estate, and I talk to them about some of the low offers that I've made, and even buying subject to, and they're like, the same thing, that will never work.
Right.
And it's because what I've seen is they cannot divorce themselves or compartmentalize from their personal situation, which is one of success, which is one of perfect payment history, which is one of perfect job history, and see how, gosh, someone could be 6 months behind on their payments. Someone could have a ton of equity, but equity does not equal cash, so equity doesn't get that kitchen or roof or whatever fixed, right? So it's part of educating them to just divorce themselves from what they've risen to. But it's also the fear. So how do you address that when you're talking to a student? Like just the fear part. I mean, whether they're successful or not. But how do you get them past that? I mean, what do you show? You build a roadmap for them. What do you show them?
I don't know. I've never thought about it quite like that. I guess I kind of do build a little bit of a roadmap. I try to empathize with them and let them know we've felt the fear as well.
Sure.
I'm sure. Even today, I'm sure there's a certain size deal that would make you pause.
I door knocked a $3.5 million house 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
It made me
right before you.
Yeah.
Do I really want to knock on this door?
What gives you the courage to do that?
Experience is probably one of the reasons. Education, which goes hand in hand with experience. You know what you're doing, and so you broke through that moment of hesitation, and I think education above everything else, I think that education really mitigates the fear the most by you knowing what you're doing. Like I said, I read the book, and reading the book that's great, but that's not enough. I could read you and I could both read a book on how to hit a home run, but we're not going to go to the batting cage and start hitting home runs or how to fly an airplane. You're not going to jump in. So it's more than just reading the book, but it's then going beyond the book and doing what the book says to do and taking the action that we talked about. But then I think there's also getting back to the attitude that we talked about. I've always had if that person can do it, I can do it too attitude. So when I see someone, like you said, you mentioned a second ago, making lowball offers and getting them accepted. I remember the first time I met an investor. I'd been investing in rental properties, and I was doing the process I just described, finding owner finance properties and trying to talk them into no money or low money down situation. And then I met a person through my network who was buying properties for 50 cents on the dollar. And I thought, you doing what? Yeah. You're buying them for 50 cents on the dollar.
Who's going to take that deal?
I'm like, my mind immediately goes, I remember thinking, is there a tear in the space-time continuum where you live? You're stepping back in time.
Right.
And then he took me out to show me what he was doing, and I saw with my own eyes, oh, they're old, ugly houses. Okay, I get it. Well, if you can do this, I can do this too, and then fix them up. And so I didn't look at it from the perspective of, I can't do that, or he's lying to me. I wanted to know more. So I actually went out. I rode with him, asked him if he'd take me out and show me.
So you did a little shadowing.
Exactly, shadowing. And then I saw what he's doing, and then it clicked. Okay, I can do that too. And so I started doing that. So I think it's a combination of all of that.
Tell me about your first, what you at the time considered a lowball offer. What you and I know as investors was probably a 70% of ARV measure.
Right.
Tell me about delivering that first. Getting it
that
out there.
First one where you're so embarrassed that you think, oh, they're going to yell at me or something. Okay. That was, and then these numbers aren't going to make sense, but they will to you because you live here in Texas. Again, this is small town Texas, so the house is worth about $50,000. And by this time, I had upgraded my marketing to at least I was advertising in the paper. So he called one of my ads in the paper. He needed to sell quickly. So I started investigating the property, and he had it on the market with a realtor for a year. And there was an illness in the family, and he needed to sell quick. And I thought, he'd had it on the market for a year at I believe it was a little over $50,000, 52 or something like that. So adjustable, yes, it is possible to buy houses for 50 grand in Texas. And so he called me, I went and looked at it, and all it needed was a little carpet and paint. I really didn't understand why it didn't sell when it was on I asked him, and he said the only thing he said was his realtor sucked. And I thought, but it's still in the MLS. Other people have seen this, and so we start talking, and he needs me to close within 7 days. And I said, well, okay, if you realize if you need me to do that, I can't pay you full asking. I'm going to have to pay you something much less. So I told him I would have to think about it. This is before I was, I was confident enough to make an on-the-spot offer. So I went home, crunched the numbers, called him back, and I remember I thought, I called one of my other investor buddies, and I said, "Here's the deal, blah blah blah." Bounce it off of them, and should I do this deal? And he said, "If you don't, I will." He said, "Offer him $25,000."
That's normally sometimes the kick in the butt it takes. They're like knocking you out of the way. Like, I hope you don't do it so I can get it. So you offered him $25,000.
I offered him $25,000, less than half, and he owned it outright. And I'm thinking as I'm saying it, why would he do this? Why would he sell it to me for $25,000? He owns it outright. He could sell it for $40,000 or $35,000 or $30,000. Why wouldn't he? Right. And I was. It made no sense, but I did it anyway. And I thought he was going to yell at me and cuss at me for wasting his time. And I called him because of that. I didn't want to do it face to face. And I said 25,000. He said done. And that's when I realized I offered too much. I should have offered him 20,000.
That's how the psychology works,
Yeah,
for sure. But it was
yeah.
still a good deal for
It
you, right?
was a smoking deal. Yeah, I mean, for back then, yeah, it was a great deal.
25,
Exactly.
yeah, I'm sure it was.
Yeah.
That's exciting. So the way that you got over that fear was just getting out of punching distance and doing it over the phone.
Right.
So,
Right.
and I think that's okay. You know,
Sure.
I mean, the worst that can happen is that someone hangs up on you,
Right.
and I think just realizing that getting hung up on is not that big of a deal.
Right, and I was just about to say, and now we don't care. I mean, now it's just, this is what I can do. Take it or leave it, because I know there's going to be another deal right around the corner.
That's right. So some investors, speaking of another deal right around the corner and people not accepting, I just learned this phrase last week. It's called house horny. Yeah, didn't know that there was a deviation like that.
Okay.
But house horny, where a lot of investors, brand new investors, are like, I've got to have a house and I have to have it at any cost.
Yeah.
Okay, I don't know what you were thinking, but
I thought that might be what it was. I've always called that being a motivated buyer.
being a motivated buyer, yeah.
You're so ready to do your first deal, you're going to jump into anything, good, bad, doesn't matter, and it could be a bad deal, but you're going to do it. By gosh, you know, they've set a goal. I'm going to make 10 offers this week or today or whatever, and they may be about to jump into the worst deal of their life, but they're ready to do it.
That's like a surefire direct path into bankruptcy. How do you coach someone out of that mistake when they're so hell-bent on it because they just feel like they have to have it?
Right. I try to calm them down and say, breathe, relax, and let them know that, listen, I know, I understand. I know where you are. I remember when I thought there was a finite amount of good deals out there. Right. But we both know now that there's an infinite number of good deals. There's always another great deal just around the corner, and you just have to be patient and realize that, none of us have the ability to take down all the great deals that are out there. None of us, because we don't have the time, we don't have the money. There's a finite amount. To go around. Exactly. I just try to get them to slow down and breathe and be patient.
As people are like wading through that, sea of patience, and for you, it said it took you a couple months before you did your first deal. Phil, it took him 6 months before he did his first deal. How do you stay focused, stay motivated, don't give up while you're in that patience period, because you should be waiting? What should you keep doing during that period if the offers aren't working, or just,
great question.
I mean, what do you do? How do you stand? Because I hear so many investors just burn out so quick because it didn't happen to me in 30 days, so I'm out.
Up. Right.
Yeah, I'm giving up.
Absolutely. And I think that goes back to the attitude part of it, of success that we talked about a little bit ago. You've got to be persistent. You've got to have the word that came to mind is like a dogged personality. You've got to, or like a dog with a bone. I'm not letting go of this bone no matter what. I used to wake up and just remind myself it's going to happen. I know it's going to happen. I know that this guy, and this guy have done it, so I can do it too. Whatever they've done, I can do better. And I just reminded myself that it may take time, but it's going to eventually happen.
So that attitude of they've done it, I can do it. Whatever they've done, I can do better. How do you cultivate that for someone who's like in corporate America and you're just like, all you have to do is just barely hit that bar, and then I mean, how do you go from a corporate America job where it's just status quo to I've got to be better. I've got to do what this other person does, and I've got to be better than him. How do you do that?
I guess that's a very.
I know that's part of your personality.
Yeah, it's part of my personality. I'm a very competitive person.
So how does someone channel Stacy Kellams, right?
That's a great question. You know what? If I were a person who didn't have that quality within themselves. I think what I would do is try to surround myself with people who did. If I were a person who, say, isn't as competitive as I am, I think I'd find a few friends that were. And you know, just like playing sports, you're an athlete. You know, when you play with someone who's better than you
rise to the
their
occasion. And when you
level.
play with someone who's less than you,
absolutely, and that
just,
goes back to that old saying that you know, I know you and Phil and I have talked about. Your net worth will be the average of the 5 people you hang out with the most.
Yeah.
So I think I would go find some successful competitive friends and start hanging out with them.
Right, and start taking them to lunch like what Stacy did. So that makes a lot of sense. I sometimes say, you know, if you want to really make an impression on someone and you want to learn from someone, you know, instead of saying, well, you know, let me take you to coffee or, you know, meet me at Starbucks, Tom, I want to take you out to Ruth's Chris and I want to pick your brain. And when you say
hey,
I'm in, right?
I'm in.
But no one ever says that.
Right.
And imagine like the level of just like attention that you'll get, the level of respect that you'll get saying something like that. And then, you know, imagine how that person will open up to you, right? So I'm glad that you said that, because it is very difficult to get out of, you know, the everyday routine and your existing friends and get out of your shell and go and network and go and meet people and go and network in the right way.
And you know, that, not to interrupt real quick, but that also goes back to what we talked about a little bit earlier about your network and networking in your local real estate investment club. One of the things I would advise everyone listening right now is, if you haven't already, join your local real estate club and get in there. And the very first question I would ask when I walk through the door, where's the owner of the club? And then point out to me who are the most successful and who are the players.
Yeah.
To show me the top 3 players, and I'm going straight over and I'm asking them to lunch that week. All 3 of them on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Boom, boom, boom.
That is awesome advice that you guys should definitely take. I love that. So, and in fact, you told me about your how influential the real estate club was to you as you know, transitioned, and not so much a transition, but built another intentionally congruent business around your real estate investing. Can you talk about?
Sure.
Can you talk about that a little
bit?
Sure.
I got into the education side of real estate,
so teaching
other people and having students of my own and whatnot by attending one of my local real estate club meetings. And I walked in one evening and this gentleman walked up to me. He was young. I guess I was younger at the time. I guess I was in my early 30s and he was about the same age. And he walked up to me and he asked me to go to lunch. He said, I've heard that you're one of the more successful investors. So he walked in and he knew to ask the question. He had followed my own advice. And he walked up, he said, I heard you're one of the more successful investors. Can I take you to lunch? And I could tell by the way he was dressed that he was already successful at something. He was dressed very, very nice. I said, sure, no problem. I think I probably made a joke like, sure, as long as it's not McDonald's, as long as you're buying me a steak.
Right.
And I said, just out of curiosity, what do you do? And he said, well, I'm a dog trainer. And his name, I guess I better not give his name in case I'll go ahead and give it. His name is Adam Katz.
Okay.
Adam Katz, the dog trainer.
The dog trainer, the last name Katz.
Adam Katz, and he's still a dog trainer. He still sells his book online. He said, I'm a dog trainer. He said, I got tired of going to people's houses and training their, I think he said, stupid dogs. He said, I got tired of going to training everyone's stupid dog from one house to the next. He said, so I took all of my knowledge, I put it in a book, and I sell it online for $49 a month or something.
Okay.
And I scratched my head, and I had a dog of my own, and I'd been to the bookstore, Barnes & Noble, and bought a dog training book for $9.95. And I told him, I said, what? Again, it doesn't make sense, you know, just like buying a house for 50 cents on the dollar. Why would someone give you pay $49 online for a book they'd go to Barnes & Noble and get for $9.95? He said, I don't know, but, you know, I made $250,000 last year doing it. And so I don't have, so I said, yes, we're going to lunch. So we go to lunch, we have a great lunch, and at the end he said, all right, so here's the deal. You're going to teach me how to become a real estate investor, and I'll teach you everything I know about selling information online. And
So then you could take everything that you knew
right.
and build a product to help other investors invest in real
Right,
estate. Okay.
exactly. And he helped me create my first website, which I still have today. And you know what, I going into that, I did the exact same thing that I did with real estate investing. When successful real estate investors would tell me what to do, I would just do it. I don't know if that means I'm simple or what. So Adam said, do this. I didn't question him. He said, he's successful, he's doing it. He said, do this. I did this. And I did it exactly the way he said to do it. And it's you realize that success is very formulaic. If you do exactly what someone else does, you're going to have a similar result. Right,
that is the
exactly.
only shortcut.
Right.
To have someone there who's been there, who's done that, who gets it, who's put it into a formula, laid out the blueprint, and say, here you go. Like that is the only shortcut.
Right.
So, so tell me a little bit about MDM. Tell me a little bit about what that is.
Okay, so MDM stands for the meter drop method.
Okay.
And that's a product of mine that I created after I found out that one of my students was having tremendous success by selling leads to other investors. Instead of buying the property and selling the property, this particular student was getting so many good quality leads from a very untapped source that he was able to sell the leads profitably to other investors, and he was making several $1,000s a month just selling leads.
Well, that's kind of the hard work, actually.
Right.
I mean, it's not. I don't know that it's the hard work. It's the work that a lot of investors know they should be doing, but don't want to do, or have fear about doing because they don't want to maybe. I don't know.
Right.
So,
or get bogged down. I know that you and Phil and I have all talked about this, you know, in the early stages of real estate investing. We get that first deal, and then we turn off the marketing.
Right,
And they stop looking at leads at that point, and their focus is 100% on that one deal. And then when they finish that deal, they look around, okay, now what do
What's
I do?
next?
Because they turned the marketing off.
Right.
Yes. So this guy never turned off his marketing. He keeps his marketing running all the time.
So it
sells
shows. So meter drop method shows investors how to find these leads, and then how to find the motivated buyers or the house warranty buyers in some cases to purchase them from you, right?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Stacy, thank you so much for coming and doing an interview with us. We're running a little bit short of time here. I'd love to ask you to reach out to our students, reach out to our real estate club members, and just tell them a little bit more about meter drop maybe over the next couple of days, and help them get over some of those fears, help them build that blueprint, and help them sort of build those nerves up to take it to the next level. So
absolutely.
Stacy, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you so much for opening up. I know you don't normally do interviews like this.
I haven't done one in a while.
So I really, really appreciate it. And thanks for sharing some of your personal stories and your personal hurdles and how you've gotten from here to there. And look forward to hearing more about meter drop. So thank you so much, Stacy.
Thank you. Bye-bye.